And we're here with Conor Ryan. Conor, what is up?
Evan, doing well. How you doing?
Doing great. We were together all day on Monday, as all the Bruins beat members were. It was quite the day in Boston. You had development camp in the morning, and everybody raced across to the other side of the city for the Jim Montgomery opening press conference at 2:30. And it was just an eventful day. There was so much to discuss.
It was like The Amazing Race, like the show. Like they very well could have just said like go, and all of us were just running out in Brighton trying to desperately get to the other side of town. Thankfully, we all made it. No, there's no stragglers. No one ran in with a huff, drenched in sweat or anything like that. So
I was close.
We all made it. We were all accounted for. At the end of the day, that's the most important thing. But a very eventful, busy first day of the off-season week from hell, I think, because everything's falling in on this 1 week. So plenty to talk about, I think, this week, which is a good thing.
I like how this week is development camp. That's like the main thing. That's why everybody's there. And I think development camp will be third on the list of things that we talk about.
I would say so.
Throughout the week. Again, no Fabian Lysell, Mason Lohrei isn't skating. So the two prospects that you fans care most about aren't even skating on the ice. So ranked, you sends it to the bottom of the list. Top of the list, so at least on Monday, and we're talking about this on Tuesday, we're going to do Montgomery. We'll do free agency. Montgomery's interesting introductory press conference was on Monday. And, obviously there was the congratulations and the thanks, and Stanley was there, and it was, big event at Legends in the Garden. But my biggest takeaway from this was actually not even anything that Jim Montgomery said, although there were some important things, and you can go watch the full video on Bruins Rinkside's YouTube channel. But to me, it was the fact that the Jacobs were asked, would you consider a rebuild? And the real answer was, no, they really won't. They're not going to be interested in a rebuild anytime soon. And I'll give them credit. They're upfront about it. They weren't beating around the bush. They even said, I don't think this fan base would take well to it. And it's an interesting thing to think about, because as much as I think fans sometimes want different things. They just want to change stuff. And you think about it, and I don't think, it would ever get to a point around here where they would have like a Chicago rebuild where you just trade every piece of every hockey player you have for draft picks. But I did find it interesting that they really did kind of put their foot down on a rebuild.
Yeah, no, I think it's one of those things where I think you kind of said it, where some Bruins fans can look to the future and something we entertain with like the Conor Bedard talk and like the potential building towards a future like that and accepting a few lean years. Well, of course, you can look at like a 5-year plan. If you suck for 1 year or 2 years and all of a sudden you have a guy like Bedard or you hit on a few other guys, then of course it's all worth it. But there's no guarantee that comes with it, right? You look at, as you said, like Chicago. Again, will the Bruins hit a low like that? I don't know, but it all depends on where the draft pick falls, who you end up taking. Like, maybe you win the first over pick 1 year and you get a Yakupov. Maybe it's the 1 year guys overachieve and you miss out on a guy like Bedard. It's all those sort of different circumstances. There's no one set way. It's not like, let's say it's the NBA where it's like the Celtics follow the same script as many other teams of just like, we're going to suck, because you know what, if you get a top 3 pick in the NBA, most likely you're going to get a very good building block. It's not as much variance as like hockey or baseball or anything like that, in terms of like landing a legit top prospect from like a top 3 selection. So because
those kids go right to the NBA.
Yeah,
and they're ready.
It's more talked about when there's like a bust, I think, in the NBA, just because of the fact that the hype surrounding some of these guys, the buildup, it's more shocking. Whereas again, like Yakupov or something like that is more startling, but it's not exactly, you could see it happening, right? Like even if like the Bruins were to tank and they got a guy like Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, who became a everyday NHLer, but he's not a guy you built your franchise around, right? When you look at where he fits into the scheme of that team. So I could see where the Jacobs are coming from in terms of not wanting to just fully blow things up, because again, you could have a situation like the Blackhawks. Even look at like the Red Wings as a team that's on the up and up. Yes, now they've got like Seider, who again was a pick that when it happened, people were like, hell are they taking this kid for? Worked out pretty well, but
yes,
there's been quite a few rough years leading up to that, of miserable stretches for that. A franchise that has a proud history, a committed fan base, all that stuff. So I can get where they're coming from. It's just about how you're going to then retool on the fly, because you can't just keep on reloading, right? Bergeron's not going to be there forever. Krejci's not going to be there forever. It's all about then how you incorporate more draft talent along the way. You're able to sign guys to affordable deals, all this stuff, and kind of keeping that train going, because it's, as we said before, they have a pretty good core moving forward, right? With McAvoy, Lindholm, Swayman, Hall, Pastrnak, all these guys. Like they will be in the mix at the very least.
yes.
But you have to start hitting on some draft picks, nailing free agents and winning a few trades just to keep this train kind of going in the years ahead, or else you're going to eventually hit a point like Chicago, who kept on trying to postpone this. It's like, we're going to get Seth Jones last year, give up all our draft picks. This is going to work. It didn't. The Red Wings, like
even a year.
The Red Wings during that kind of last stretch where they really should have been selling, kept on signing older veterans. Your luck runs out eventually.
Yes.
So the Bruins have to be very crafty in order to avoid kind of that dreaded rebuild that no one wants to take part in.
And again, I think it's concerning when you mention those things, right? Your Detroit, your Chicago's, when you hear the Jacobs then saying, we're going to do everything we can to win a Stanley Cup. Like, that's a great mindset to have. But looking at this roster, I think it is hard to put that as the number one thing. Obviously, you want to win a Stanley Cup, but this roster is really in need of some kind of a retool. You do need to switch some things around, enhance the prospect pool a little bit, especially down the middle. I don't know if you can do all that and actively keep trying to win Stanley Cups. Because again, it's kind of like take the short-term pain for the long-term gain, in a sense of, take the hurt now. I think you can still retool and be, first round playoff team. I don't think that is out of the question. But again, to be a true Stanley Cup contender, especially with teams like the Avalanche and the Lightning and the Hurricanes and all these other really good teams, you're not there yet, at least yet. And again, we'll get to free agency in a second, but again, they just aren't there. Some other interesting stuff from the press conference. Don Sweeney was up there, and Don Sweeney's mic initially was not working, and it came at a bad time because someone asked him about Krejci and Bergeron, and I'm sitting there like writing down the quote, and then of course the mic breaks. I'm like, oh, we got to start over again. But both look like they're headed in the right direction to them, that in a positive direction. Looks like both guys. Feels like Krejci's going to be announced like any second with him. Kevin Weeks tweeted like right before we came on. For screen.
Don't scare Evan. No, don't worry. Yeah, it'll happen one of these days. One of these podcasts, it will happen.
Me, you, and Ty Anderson went out for a bite to eat after the Montgomery press conference, and I did the cardinal sin as we were getting up from the table. I did a horrible thing. I said that something happened when it didn't, and I made you guys put your food down and look at your phones to see if it happened.
Extremely rude.
It's very rude.
Completely out of line. Yes. You can no longer sit with us at the lunch table. Evan.
It's like the Joe Buck. That was a cowardly act. But anyways. Feels like with the cap space that they have, right, $2.3 million. Not only will it be difficult to get Krejci and Bergeron under that. Again, you could use LTIR. You never know how you use it. You can put guys there to start the season. Obviously, you can put like Marchand and McAvoy potentially. But it's also probably going to be tough because free agency is on Wednesday. Doesn't look like they have a lot of space to do a lot of other things either.
Yeah, that's pretty much what Sweeney acknowledged of, unless it's a trade or anything like that. He said they're not going to be as aggressive as they were last year, which like you don't have $20 million in cap space. You're not signing like 5 or 6 guys. We knew that. Ideally, you'd like the Bruins to be in a position where they have the physical flexibility to maybe obviously bring back Bergeron and Krejci, which, as you said, seems like it's trending in that direction. It'd be kind of surprising if it didn't happen at this point, right? In terms of just all the like. This past Sweeney's most recent comments were the most, I think, striking yet of like, yeah, we've talked to them multiple times, Krejci multiple times about getting him back. So I think it's safe to assume that one, if not both, are back. So we'll see how that those contracts play out. But ideally, if you're the Bruins, you'd still like to be in a spot where you have some wiggle room financially to either sign like another middle six winger or a depth defenseman or something like that. Like, I don't think they'd have the means to sign, like obviously Kadri wouldn't make sense now if Krejci's back, but someone like an impact, top six guy, or like a Josh Manson, like a top four guy or anything like that. I don't think they have the means to do that. But even if it's, I talked about it on my most recent NHL notebook, but like a guy like Mason Marchment, would seem to be the perfect breakout candidate. Like, had a really strong year this past year with Florida. A guy that was on the third line for Florida. Wasn't like a Dubileski situation where it's like, all right, we give him top 6 minutes, a lot of power play, and he just has a career year before he hits free agency. Like, Marchment generating quite a lot at 5-on-5 play, kind of by himself, getting inside ice, power forward kind of player. That's a guy that, again, it's not going to break the bank, I don't think, but if you had an extra $3.5 million sitting around, it'd be great to use it on a guy like that. Right now, you're looking at it of, all right, they already don't have enough cap space as constituted to get Bergeron and Krejci back. So you got to move a piece at some point, whether that's buying out Foligno or if it's trading Riley, something like that. They have to get creative. But again, you'd like to do more than just bring back Bergeron and Krejci. It helps, but like a little bit more, right?
You mentioned there at the end, needing a little bit more. I even said it was a safe bet that you need a little bit more. And you mentioned Mason Marchment, good piece on him. And again, good find. Who was it? You had one a few years ago, or maybe a year or two ago. You had Craig Smith 2 years ago.
And then I said 2 years ago. And then last year I said they should have signed Bunting, which would have been very useful.
That was the one.
Yeah.
That was the one. So maybe the Bruins are listening to you. That's the thing. That's got to start getting in their ear about this stuff. They got to get a subscription to BSJ. That's what they got to do. My pick, and it's on D, is Jan Ruda. I think it's for again a right shot depth defenseman. Maybe not every game, but Connor Clifton is your third pairing right shot defenseman. Again, not bad. It's not I wouldn't say it's a point of serious need, but after him on the depth chart, you have nothing.
Yeah.
And I do think again, I don't really think Josh Brown is coming back. You could get him back probably for very cheap if you really wanted him. But again, I don't know how viable he is as a, vying for an everyday spot in the lineup. I think Jan Ruda, again, has won, I think 2 Stanley Cups with Tampa Bay. Was a valuable depth member for them. Like a guy, he's a big body. Like, again, Brown's a big body, but not to the level that, I think he's a big body, but he's just not quick.
Not as reliable. I think you can you put out Ruda in a pinch, whether it's all right, he's gonna leapfrog Clifton in the lineup, or if it's them battling back and forth, you're not like, all right, well, it's all like Josh Brown's in the lineup. We know what he's gonna be. He's gonna be physical, but you're like, we'll see how he does. It's like Ruda, like you kind of know what you're getting, and there's value in that of a veteran, big body defenseman like that further down the lineup. Exactly.
So that's like my pick as a guy who I think the Bruins. And I don't think he's gonna break the bank. Again, I think he's making $1.3 million now. I don't foresee him getting too big of a raise. But again, to do all these things, you do need to clear space. It's funny. Sweeney had an interesting quote at the draft. He was asked if the team needs to add to the roster in the next few weeks. And he said, there are going to be opportunities presented to a couple of guys to play in situations and leverage some minutes. That is really important. We have to add to the depth of the club more overall, create some internal competition. We've definitely heard that quite a bit over the past bunch of years. Unless there's player movement in the next few days, it's not going to be a high-end player coming in as a result of where we are in our cap situation, which he is not wrong. Like they don't have cap space. And that's why I keep seeing these Nazem Kadri reports. They're like, oh, the Bruins were in on him. They could get him. And it's like, yes, he fits the mold. Like I do think he would fit well. I don't love the years, but you could pay him $4 million. And I don't know how he's fitting in here. And that's the tough part. So not to get a Kadri, but what do you see them actually doing anything to clear cap space? Because I feel like we would have heard stuff by now.
I mean, you would think, right? I mean, who knows what happens? It could be something where they are over the cap limit right now because they don't really have to, get on top of it before you get to training camp, and they can use LTIR, even though again, that's kind of a weak crutch because Marchand and McAvoy and Grizz are coming back like within.
They're not going to rest them for the playoffs.
Yeah, exactly. And if so, that team's are going to be a wagging if you don't have to worry about McAvoy and those guys for the whole season, which is not going to be the case. They will be back. So you can't operate with all this extra cap room and think you can kind of get away with it. So you feel like there's got to be a domino that has to fall, whether it's, again, I think you need to have it anyway, just to get Bergeron and Krejci back. Like, we're talking about these hypotheticals of adding to this team, which I think they should do. But you need to do something, right? Because here's the fact, like, even if you get Bergeron and Krejci back on $3 million contract, something like that, $3 million with like a lot of bonus overages that you can push over into next season. Got to clear up cap room anyway to do that. But then also, all right, if then it comes down to, well, a guy like Mason Marchment's potentially, a guy you could get, is keeping Nick Foligno instead of buying him out going to be the obstacle that you're not going to try to cross over to get a guy like Marchment, who, again, who knows, maybe he's a boom or bust UFA target. You don't know whether or not maybe it's just one great year for him. But you know what? I'd probably have more confidence in going with a guy like Marchment, who looked damn good on the third line of a good Florida team last year, than a guy like Nick Foligno, and hopefully that he breaks out. Where even if Foligno does, let's say he bounces back, I think a bounce back year for Foligno is 10 goals, like 25 points. Like what exactly?
Ooh, that 10 goals would be a lot.
Yeah, like what are you exactly expecting out of him? And is that worth $3.8 million? No, I wouldn't say so. Like, I'd rather, buy out that contract than kind of roll with that gamble of whether or not he's going to bounce back, especially when I think you can utilize that money more effectively, whether it's for Marchment or a depth defenseman or anything like that. Like, there's other ways that you can utilize that cap space, not to mention the fact that there's so many guys that weren't qualified today, that even there's plenty of other guys that you could probably target for cheap. Like, you see like Kubalik and Strome and all these other players that at the very bottom of that pile, there's going to be guys probably signing for below their market value, or what they probably should get, like, 1.5, 2 million, 2.5. There's probably going to be value out there, and the Bruins are going to be like kind of sitting on the sidelines right now, unless they look at moving this cap space, which there seems like there's avenues or players that are expendable if the greater, scheme of things is getting more talent to help with this win now window that they're in.
And again, Foligno, it's an interesting case because there's not even really a spot in the lineup for him, because you look at it right now. And again, you look at the top 6 is pretty much full right now. Let's say Krejci's back. You got your top 6, that you've got your 6 guys. Look at the third line, right? You have to think. I mean, I know they have a lot of young guys vying for spots. I've mentioned this before where I thought, the third line, and this still could happen with the third line is a bunch of young guys. But right now, I mean, that's probably Holla, Coyle, Smith. So that's your third line. And then your fourth line is where you put in the young guys. So like, you lose a Tomas Nosek, you get that money off the books. You trade him for a pick or whatever it might be. And you got Frederick down there, McLaughlin, Oscar Steen, Jack Studnicka, right? You got all those guys down there, and they've said they want internal competition. They want, the younger players to get more of a chance under Montgomery. Foligno's not a young guy, and Foligno's costing you an arm and a leg for what he's giving you. And again, great guy. Like, that's the thing. This isn't like personal against Nick Foligno, but you do need to move on. Like, that is in some ways like dead salary cap space. You need to free that up. So I keep looking at that as one way. Nosek's another where you could maybe free up some space. I'm interested in Holla. Holla is one I keep looking at, because if you do get Krejci, right? If you do go out and get David Krejci, you got your 1-2 down the middle, even though Krejci's coming off of, playing in the Czech, which you said is, plumbers. I saw someone on Twitter today say it was playing a bunch of farmers, which, like, interchangeable. Sure. Whatever works for you. But then in some ways, Holla's coming off a really good year. Like, his value is high. You look at a lot of guys in that roster, not a lot of people's value is at their highest. His value is high. Yeah. It's not an expensive deal. And if you really wanted to move him, I am curious what he would get on, in a trade. Because again, if you want to move in those younger guys, if you want your third line to be, Frederick, Coyle, Smith, and you do more young guys on the fourth line, like, I do think that opens up options for you. And I think you'd probably deal Holla for picks. And again, I'm not saying that they should, but if they do get Krejci, I think they have to consider it. Mike Riley's another one, right? You've got Grzelcyk, you've got Lindholm, you got Forbert, you've got Ashan, you got Zaboral. Like, you've got guys on the left side. I know guys can play the right, but he is taking up $3 million in cap space. So I do think those are avenues that they can take to free up that space. Whether they do that or not, and again, you mentioned it, like, they might just wait till right before the season. They might wait till they enter training camp, where that's when they kind of use their they finagle their salary caps. They do their cap gymnastics, so to speak. But who knows? It doesn't feel like it's going to be a huge free agency day. Do you think that we see a David Pastrnak extension anytime soon? Do we think that's going to be the big thing?
I think I was saying earlier today, it's like the Bruins, I think in an ideal situation, probably want it to be like the Michael Corleone at the baptism, like settling all family business of like, noon hits on Wednesday and it's like Bergeron, Krejci, and Pastrnak all, sign, for Bergeron and Krejci they're back and you sign Pastrnak to a deal. That'd be the ideal situation. Is it going to happen? I don't think so. I would not be surprised if Bergeron and Krejci are all settled by Wednesday if, based on everything Don Sweeney is kind of mapped out in terms of the dialogue. But we'll see with Pastrnak. It seems like they've already, started laying that groundwork for a new deal. And it could be something where you wait till training camp. But I think from the Bruins perspective, they at least want to get that dialogue started, which they already have. And it's about hopefully bridging that gap sooner rather than later. Because I think we talked about this in the last podcast. The last thing you want to do if you're the Bruins, and you're probably going to be treading water out of the gate in October, November, is having this team be like 10-17 and Pasternak's a pending free agent and everyone be like, did they just trade him at the deadline? Like, is it worth it? The Bruins don't want to have that narrative. So we'll see what happens, but I would not be surprised if those negotiations, if they're not struck by this week when everything seems to get done, if it carries over into August and hopefully around the start of training camp, try to get him to sign on the dotted line there. It's
interesting. If Krejci comes back, I'm curious. Remember how they had that like 3-page long graphic of like his thank you to Boston? I wonder if like he'll do something different, something more short and concise for his return. Will they just, so let's just say like, it's gonna
be the Michael Jordan. It's gonna be the I'm back.
David Krejci standing there with that. Hey, you know what? That'd be smart on their part. That would do well. Again, and I think the other thing is, and one thing that, mentioned before we head out, again, I think running it back again and again with Bergeron and Krejci is not the best option in general. It's the best option though for their cap situation and for their prospect pool. That's the thing, right? Because again, are Bergeron, is Bergeron Kadri better down the middle? Yes, of course it is, right? Like obviously, but is it better than, is 7 years of Nazem Kadri better than 1 year Krejci with the money that Kadri's going to be making? No, it isn't. You're going to be cap constrained later on. That's another deal that you're going to want to have to get off the books or might not be worth it. So this again avoids that. They'll find a way to sign someone else to a terrible contract. Don't you worry. But again, I think that, for what they have, for the options that are in front of them, Bergeron and Krejci down the middle, not the worst thing in the world. They're worse things. Hey, imagine neither came back. Then
could be worse.
Competing for a cup would be very fun in that environment. Because by the way, even if they don't come back, like let's say both of them didn't come back, it's not like a bunch of cap space opens up.
Yeah, exactly.
They're in the same situation.
The Coyle Holla top 6.
Ooh, that would be spicy. That would be content gold right there. Anyways, Conor, what can the people look forward to from you over at BSJ?
Yeah, we're going to be very busy over at BSJ this week between development camp, stories on all these up and coming prospects. We have plenty of stuff from Jim Montgomery's presser, all the stuff we covered today on the podcast. And again, free agency, whether it's the futures of Bergeron and Krejci, whether it's them moving out contracts to free up cap space. There's a lot of dominoes that are going to fall this week, and we'll have you covered every step of the way over at BSJ. So please subscribe at bostonsportschannel.com. Want to follow me on Twitter? You can do that at ConorRyan_93.
Go do all that. Make sure to subscribe to Bruins Rinkside on YouTube. I'm Evan Marinofsky. You Bruins Beat listeners, have a great rest of your week.